Hello everyone. Through the previous lectures in Unit 9, I believe you have tasted some preliminary flavor of machine learning and its applications in different ecological studies. In this video, we are going to discuss one of the most simple but still very effective models in machine learning, which is the random forest model. I will first introduce some basic concepts in random forest, and then we'll bring this model into the context of predicting the soil and carbon distributions in Macedonia. We will compare the predicting results of random forest with the linear regression models. At the end of this video, we will also discuss the interpretability of the random forest model. Before talking about any technical details, we need to know what is a random forest. According to the Wikipedia, a random forest is defined as an ensemble learning method for classification, regression, and other possible tasks that operate by constructing a multitude of decision trees at training time. In a classification study, the final output of the random forest would be the class that was selected by most trees. For a regression problem, the final results would be the mean value of predictions by all the individual trees. To further illustrate this idea, say we have planted a bunch of trees in the random forest, which terminologically are called decision trees. The first decision tree, as you can see from this slide, generates an apple as the final decision. However, the second decision tree generates a lemon as its final result. And we can have a third decision tree which generates an apple again as a final result. We may simultaneously have many other similar trees in this endeavor, and all of them together form the so-called random forest. And in making the final decision of the random forest, we just need to assemble all the outputs from different trees. That is, we either choose the majority in classification problem or calculate the mean values in a regression problem. As you may have noticed in this slide, the decision trees are the fundamental units for a random forest. So what is a decision tree? By definition, it is a tree-shaped diagram that is used to determine a spruce of actions. Analogical to a real tree, the decision trees in a random forest also have their branches and leaves. Each of the branches of a decision tree represents a possible decision, occurrence, or actions in your specific problem. For example, see if we have a bowl that is full with different kinds of fruits, how are we supposed to differentiate them from one another? Intuitively, we may ask some different questions that are related to the typical features of different fruits. We can see from this slide, we have a bowl with apples, lemons, and cherries. Probably we can first ask a question about the diameter of those fruits. If we ask the question, is the diameter larger than 3 centimeters? Then we can identify cherries from apples and lemons. And further, we can ask, whether the color is red or not to differentiate apple from lemon. So after two questions, we now separate all these three kinds of fruits from the bowl. In this process, the two questions split different fruits, and we call them as the branches of the decision tree. Meanwhile, right before the questions, we have the so-called decision nodes, where the fruits are waiting to be separated. And this is the whole process happens in one decision tree. In real world, we have lots of information about the features of different fruits. And therefore, we can take all this available information into our predictions, which makes multiple decision trees possible. And this slide shows three possible decision trees. As an example, all these three decision trees eventually precisely separate different kinds of fruits. If the samples are all the possible observations, theoretically, actually each of the decision trees can make 100% correct predictions. But such thing unfortunately does not happen in most of the time. For example, red may be the most common color for apples, but at the same time, we can definitely buy some green apples from any supermarket, which is as fruitful as the red ones. So if we have an observation that is out of the samples we used in building those decision trees, and that it has a diameter of 7 centimeter with the color of green and medium vitamin C and rich sugar content, how will different decision tree perform in identifying such kind of fruit? As we can see from this slide, the first decision tree tells us that such kind of observation should be a lemon because its diameter is larger than 3 centimeter and its color is not red. However, our second decision tree tells us that this observation should be an apple because it does not have a very high vitamin C content, and at the same time its diameter is larger than 3 centimeter. Meanwhile, when we look at the third decision tree, it indicates our observation should be an apple because it has pretty high sugar content. So if our random forest has three trees in total, two of the trees voted the observation as an apple, and one voted as a lemon. As I mentioned before, for a classification problem, actually the majority wins. So our random forest eventually gives its prediction as an apple, which is correct. So from this simple demonstration, we can see that predictions based on a single or few decision trees are not very reliable. But after we built a bunch of decision trees in the random forest, although some of the trees may not give the correct answers, but the ensemble of the random forest can still make reliable predictions. That is the main feature and the essence of a random forest. To bring the random forest from abstract concepts to real practice, in this video we will have three tasks for you to get more familiar with random forest. We will try to predict soil and carbon content in Macedonia with multiple environmental covariance. If you are working on biogeochemistry or some modeling stuff on the land carbon cycle, you may have already known that soil and carbon is one of the most important parts of the land carbon cycle. But it can be really precisely predicted by conventional regression methods or simulated by the process models. So here we will try to use a random forest to map the soil and carbon distributions in Macedonia. Apparently, soil and carbon will be the prediction target. And in this practice, we have 11 different environmental variables that can serve as predictors in the random forest. And the abbreviations and full names of these variables are listed in this table. So in the first task, we will have some screening on the available data. From your CarboTrain interface, you may choose the name of the unit and the exercise, and then select the environmental variables you want to look into. After setting your output pathway, you can run this exercise. For those who want to use the original R code to do the exercise, you can find the code via the directory listed in the gray box. And two figures will be generated from the first exercise. The first one is the basic distributions of observed soil and carbon content in Macedonia. And actually, I have a question for you here. That is, how will you describe the basic distribution shape of soil and carbon? Do you think data with this kind of distribution shape can be easily predicted or not. And the second figure you will generate from this exercise shows the spatial distributions of soil and carbon contents in Macedonia, and at the same time the graded map of the environmental variable you selected in the carbon interface. And also I have two questions for you here. You may first describe the spatial patterns of the soil and carbon content and try to discuss how the spatial patterns of soil and carbon may correlate with the environmental variables you selected. After looking at the data, the second task will help you to build a random forest model and make predictions on soil and carbon content. In R language, we have a package called random forest for you to use. And if we look at the details of the random forest function, we may find that several key hyperparameters is the most important ones. After looking at the data, the second task will help you to build a random forest model and make predictions on soil and carbon content. In our language, we have a package called random forest for you to use. And if we look at the details of the random forest function, we may find several key hyperparameters that you should be particularly pay attention to. The first one, formula, describes the structure of the random forest model, which includes the targets you want to predict and the predictors you want to use in your prediction. In our case, the prediction target is the soil and carbon content, and you can use any of the 11 environmental variables as predictors. In addition to the formula, you may specify your data of both your predictors and the prediction target. Also, as we have already discussed, a successful random forest needs lots of decision trees. So you may need to decide how many trees you want to plant in the random forest. For each of the decision trees, you may also need to decide how many variables you want to use in building the branches. In our carbon interface, you can specify all these options according to your preference. And again, if you are interested in the detailed coding, you may find the code through the directory listed in the gray box. After running the second task, you will have one output figure with 3 panels. The panel A shows the prediction results with a linear model that follows the same formula with your random forest. The panel B indicates the prediction power of your random forest, and the panel C is the upscaled prediction of a random forest on soil and carbon content in Macedonia. And from these 3 panels, you may answer how much of your own random forest outperforms the linear model. Meanwhile, because we have several hyperparameters that can be changed, so can you explore which size of hyperparameters give the best performance of the random forest? And also, you may not be satisfied with the performance of the random forest. So can you propose some other ways that we can further improve its performance other than changing the hyperparameters? After we have had the predicted maps of soil and carbon content in Macedonia, because we used multiple environmental variables in training the random forest, a natural question is how to interpret the results of random forest, or what happened inside the random forest that made it better than a normal linear model in predicting soil and carbon content. People often take machine learning model as a black box, which is excellent in solving your problem, but it is hard to be explained. But in reality, to a certain degree, machine learning models are not that difficult to interpret. Here I will show you two basic metrics in understanding a machine learning model. The first one is the so-called feature importance, which quantifies the importance of your predictor in a machine learning model. We have different ways to express such importance. We can conduct a permutation experiment where the original predictor values were replaced by some random values, and thus the relationship between the investigate variables and the outcomes was broken. We can measure the increase in the prediction error. In most cases, that would be the mean squared error as the permutation importance. So if we get larger permutation importance of one variable, then that means the model performance is more relying on that variable. Alternatively, we have Gini importance, which goes through all the splits for which the variable was used and then measures how much such a variable has reduced the variance or the Gini index in comparison with the parent node. A variable with larger Gini importance indicates it is more efficient to be used in the random forest model to reduce the prediction variance. After identifying the importance of different variables, we can also further look into the relationship between those important variables and prediction target that was learned by the random forest. The partial dependence plot shows the marginal effects of the variable in predicting the target outcomes through the partial dependence plot. We can visually show that the relationship between the target and the variable is linear, monotonic, or more complex non-linear relationship. When we look at the partial dependence plot at individual side, it is also called the individual conditional expectation. And the mean value of all these individual conditional expectation compose the global partial dependence plot. Here I show an example in a study of predicting how many bicycles will be rented on a given day. We may expect many variables that influence the rented number of bicycles. For example, the air temperature, humidity, and the wind condition of a certain day. Here we can see that after training, the random forest learned complex relationships between these variables and the number of rented bikes. For temperature in particular, we can see such relationship is neither linear nor monotonic. It will be difficult for us to use a linear model to describe such kind of relationship. And this actually highlights the advantage of machine learning models. So back to our practice of predicting soil and carbon. After you have trained the random forest model, you can also identify the most important variables in predicting soil and carbon content and explore the relationships between those variables and soil and carbon. In task 3, you may use the same model structure you tried in task 2 and explore the importance of different environmental variables. There will be two figures. The first one shows the importance of different variables measured by both the permutation importance and the Gini importance. And you may tell from your figure that which variables are the most important ones for your random forest. And at the same time, you may also notice that results from permutation importance may be different from the Gini importance. So can you try to explain why they are different? The second figure from task 3 shows the partial dependence plot of the first three most important variables measured by the permutation importance in your random forest. The black lines indicate the individual conditional expectation, and the light yellow lines indicate the global partial dependence plot. You may notice that the individual lines are different from each other. So can you explain what caused such kind of difference? And for those who are familiar with soil science, you may also think about whether such kind of relationship retrieved from the random forest are reasonable or not. If they are reasonable, can you use your empirical knowledge to explain the emerged relationship? After all these three tasks, here comes the end of the training session. After all these three tasks, here comes the end of this training session. In this practice, we learned some basic concepts of random forest and built up a simple random forest model. At the end, we also tried to explain the results learned by the random forest. But this is not the end of the story. For machine learning, it is never enough to only build up a model without testing its robustness to avoid overfitting. Also, it is very important for us to quantify the uncertainty of predictions made by machine learning models. And eventually, we have known that machine learning is pretty good at pure data mining. But in ecological studies, we are also interested in magnetic understanding from big data. So that leads to the question that how shall we integrate machine learning with process models so that we can retrieve magnetic understanding from big data. And you can find all the answers to all these questions in Unit 10, and I will see you again there.